What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. This week we're back on the Sargent. That's right, we got Sargent Square back in the shop. If you guys didn't catch the last episodes that we had on this, make sure you go back and check them out. We did the bed work with the Poppy Patina bed liner. We also got the rear end put in, the brakes, but we're not too happy with the way it's sitting, so we're gonna be doing some more work to it. We're gonna be getting our front and rear bumpers mounted with Zero hardware. It's gonna be a little tricky because this is not a stock chassis. This frame is from American Chassis, and I don't believe any of this stuff is gonna work out as far as the brackets go. So Dave's gonna get a little creative with some installation on that, as well as we have a set of slosh tubs for the front inner fenders. It's a really nice kit. It's got everything you need. We got a bunch of work to do, so Dave's gonna get to it.
So we have our 2 stock brackets bolted up to our bumper. We have to pull this thing in about, I don't know, 2 inches or so. We're already butted up against the sway bar. So this outer bracket in its stock form is definitely not gonna work for this application. We might be able to like cut it back and attach it to the frame and extend it right between the sway bar and the core support. But for right now, we're gonna have to remove it. This second bracket here, see it right here. It's supposed to slip through where the chassis bolts to the core support bracket. There's a gap in between, and actually it's filled with a whole bunch of spacers. All right, so we got all of our new holes drilled and the brackets put on the inside to the frame rail and to the bumper, and everything is actually tightened up. As you can see, it is sturdy and in place. Most important things that I was considering was the gap this way and the gap vertical on each corner. Try to make those as even as possible, and then obviously the gaps on the outside as well, which I think we might end up cutting them in and re-welding them anyway, but for building purposes it's great to have it centered. The next step would be to take off the frame side bolts of the bracket, leave these brackets on. That way we have them exactly where they want to be, and we could go weld them on the bench. But before we do that, we're going to start doing some design for the outer support brackets. So something will tie in from the back here, go diagonal to the frame, and then in between this sway bar and our core support mount, probably ending up in maybe one of these holes. In order to connect the outside of this bumper, tie it onto the inside of the frame to give some support, I'm going to be using a piece of pipe. I've already made this little bracket here, and it's still hot. We're just welding the seam on it, the bend seam, but until we get rid of the hardware, it's going to bolt through here, and then this pipe will get welded to the end, and it's bent in such an angle that that pipe comes down and will catch the front of this bracket right here, which attaches to the frame. I'll just tack this in place first, then mount the whole assembly, and then I'll be able to measure for my secondary bracket to attach it to the frame side. All right, so we got our first bracket down in here. You can see, where's it? This piece of pipe right here, going across. So we got our second support bar all welded up. Next we're gonna bolt it into the front of the bumper and then clamp it to the frame side, mark all of our holes. That way when we pull it off of the bumper, we'll have those marks on the frame side to drill out, as well as the driver's side, and then we'll weld this side to the bumper itself. All right, so we got all those brackets welded on the back side of the bumper. Now it's time to pull out all these pieces of hardware, and then we will make some fill-in plates for them. This will give the bumper a lot smoother of a look. So we got all of our holes filled in here. We're going to now bring the bumper back over, put it on, make sure our mounting points are still all good with these brackets welded, make sure the whole system works so we can get on and off without having to do any fine maneuvering, and make sure the holes that we just drilled to catch our brackets are lined up. Okay, so we got our bumper mounted in. It's looking nice and level with the truck. Nice and tucked evenly on each side. All the hardware is tightened, so this is the position it's going to sit in. The next thing we're going to address is this gap right here. You want to bring in this gap, and then this gap. But down here, I don't know if it's the fender or the bumper, but one of the two is slightly different. So we're going to probably take in more on the top than the bottom. Take some measurements, translate them to the front here, and we'll take out kind of like at an angle a little bit. That way the front gets sucked in a little more than the bottom. We're gonna take some measurements, take some painter's tape, make a tape line on each side, and then start cutting. All right, so we are done with the front bumper for now. We got our bumpers nice and tucked. Small gap over here, small gap over here, and we got the fronts finished and blended well enough so that way there's not too much body work left when it goes to the body shop. We're dead on even centering the bumper. So we're going to move along and go to the back bumper, which I haven't even looked at yet. Let's check it out. So looking at this frame and this bumper, we do have these brackets that fit nice right on here, but unfortunately it's not going to sit around our edge here. It kicks way too far over. What we're going to have to do is use this bracket as a marker and cut off the edge that we don't need to tuck it in. All right, we got our bumper all set up here with some jack stands, and this is looking pretty good right here. So what I'm gonna do next, we have our chop stock bracket. We'll bolt that back in the factory locations, see where that sits underneath, be able to design my catch bracket. If this one works, I'll chop the other one to the same exact length, do the same thing on the other side. Okay, so I cut a test piece just out of some scrap material just to see how it's going to fit up here. And so this is the bumper side, this is the frame side, and got some holes there, and it looks like it's going to fit really well. I had originally put in this bend when I mocked up the bumper the first time. I thought I was going to have to come to the front face of this and weld it, but these holes have adjustability too. So I could actually get this bumper mount flush with the frame, which makes this a whole lot easier. So what I'm gonna do is redesign this bracket, extend this back piece over, and then I could actually just do 4 holes right into the side of the frame. All right, I've got the passenger side all buttoned up. These two are bolted in tight to the bumper side bracket, and the bumper side bracket's bolted to the frame bracket's bolted to the frame. So this is where it's going to sit. I left this amount of space here, and then I mocked it up so it would be even on this side. Also trying to leave a little bit of gap between the edge of the bumper and the bedside of the truck. Same here, that way you got a little wiggle room. You don't want it rubbing. Now that this is mocked up and the gap is even all the way across, I could start making the bracket for this side. So we're gonna cut out another bracket, get up here, do the same process. All right, so we got the bumper all mounted on the middle two mounts. Nice and tight, secure to the truck, not going anywhere. Nice and even going across. And our sides are looking pretty good. So now that this is set, what we have to do is make some bracing. Here's the original mounts here that tied these outer two that kind of came in like this to the frame at an angle and held this from wiggling back and forth. So we're gonna recreate something just like we did on the front. We did like a little angle tab with a piece of tubing all the way into the center. And what we might end up doing is tying it into our bracket right here. All right, so now that our bumper's fully mounted, we do want to tuck these sides in a little bit. I made a little mark right here and made a little mark over on this side, over here. So I'm gonna pull the whole bumper off, cut slits in the top edge and the bottom edge. That way they could fold in and out like this. Then while it's off, I'm gonna weld all of our brackets on the inside. That way we can eliminate this hardware, put it back on, be able to bend in our bumpers exactly where we want, cut off the excess, and then re-weld the bumper ends back together. Got our bumper back on after filling in all of our gaps. All the brackets line up really nice. Next up here, while I was on the bench, made some cuts on the side. So we're gonna try and shave down the distance between the outside of the bedside and the edge of the bumper. So made this cut. You can bring it in like this. We're more tucked in on the backside. Alright, so we finally got it. Tucked rear bumper is reinstalled. Got a couple bolts tightened just to hold in place. You see it nicely hugs each side as it wraps around instead of having a giant gap there. And there's some adjustability. Right now we got a nice even gap going all the way across, which is what we want. And there's some room for adjustment with the final install so we can place it exactly where it needs to be. Yeah, it's looking pretty good from where I stand. We're gonna move on to the next project. Yeah. We got our universal fuel cell. It's got these mounting tabs already put on the side. They come with rubber isolation pads put underneath. They also come with these steel bars and then have machined holes that can catch mounting bolts. You can either weld these to the frame or you can actually use machine screws and bolt them in. We're gonna use these wings because we're gonna go actually on like the inside of the frame rail instead of resting on top. If we rest on top, the top of the tank will hit the cross member for the bed, so we can't have that happen. But since these wings are so long, and we need to get them up under this piece of the frame rail, they would come into this section right here, which is boxed in. So I'm gonna cut this out, same on the other side, and then we should be able to slip our tank wing right under here and then just be able to bolt the tank in and out really easily with hardware under here. Okay, so I got those pieces cut out of the frame rail, test fitted the tank in there, fits right up. I got these spacer brackets here. They're gonna mount on the underside of the frame rails. So what I'm doing now is I'm figuring out exactly relative to this tab where I want these. I measured the inside of the frame is about 30 inches from inside to inside lip. So what I want is 30 inches in between here and here. If I take my tape and I hold it up right there, you get exactly 30 inches right here. So right now, both of these are flush with the edge of the little wings of this tab, mounting tab. So what I have to do first is set this on, line up my holes, mark them and drill them, and then mount this to the tank on either side. That way, when I put it up, we know that these holes are gonna line up, put the tank exactly where we want it. All right, we got this in the mocked up position here. So we're gonna make some adjustments to this design. It was nice that the tank fits and is nice and tucked up, but as far as the fill goes, it wasn't ideal. So I had to cut out the box section to get this tab to fit inside the frame. We're gonna pull the tank, cut that all the way flush with the bottom of the frame, the box out, and that way the tank can rest on the top of the bottom rail of the frame instead of sandwiching up to the top rail. That will give us the tank going lower. We gotta do the cutting, get the tank mocked up, and then we'll have to see what clearances are with the bottom of the tank, make sure that we have enough ground clearance on the tank itself. Okay, so this setup works pretty well for our fill, but we're unsure the tank itself is going to be hanging too low past the frame when this thing's actually on the ground. So easy peasy, we can jack up the back, take the jack stands off, lower it back up the wheels. All right, so now we got this down the ground and I got our license plate mocked up. The tank itself is way too close to the ground, and if the truck gets any lower, once there's weight on the back, if we want to decide to drop it, the suspension, then that's definitely going to be an issue. So we had dreams of a cool hidden fill, but that's not going to happen. Instead, what we're going to do is reverse these mounts, bring it back up right under the frame rail, and then we're going to have the fill go in here, but we're going to move it off to the corner where it's less obtrusive, so that way the bed can still be used. We'll get these reversed, mock back up, and then be cutting this fitting off at the bottom. That way we can reuse this nice cap and threaded section over here on the bed. All right, so we got our 90. It's gonna sit just like this. And then I got this block of wood cut to the distance between the bed floor and our support bracket. So that represents the gap we have to work with. So just to be on the safe side, I think the easiest thing to do, I think on the Plasma, I'm just gonna cut an identical spacer that's made out of 1/4 inch. And then that will drop our tank down an extra 1/4 inch, giving us extra clearance on this, just in case, because the last thing we want is having it interfere with all our tank components. But we are tucked up nice and tight right now, so dropping our overall height 1/4 inch is not going to affect our ground clearance at all. So we got our fill neck welded to the tank, and also I just threw a couple of tacks for those spacers, that way they're not flopping around. It makes it easier to take in and out. While we're waiting for this to cool, I'm going to start with the fill cap. So we're going to keep this original cap here. It's going to go on top of the threaded portion of bung, and then to get it down to our hose size, the outside diameter of this is 2 3/8, and then all of our regular fill hose is 2 inch. So I'm going to chop off a piece of straight, weld it to the inside of this piece right here, and that will be our adapter. One thing is that this is coming down through the bed. We want to keep this top as low to the bed as possible while still having enough room to weld the other piece and have our transition hose clamp onto it. So we need at least a few inches here for our hose to slip on and clamp. We got our little brackets here welded with our studs in them now. Just to show you how it works. It's gonna come in here, bolt on right there, and then we got our 3 mounting points at the bottom. They're gonna catch here, here, and here. It'll have like a little adjustability to it within the holes so everything can get lined up. Now that the bed is back on, we can see we're not crushing our fill tube, which is good. But now we could really see the space between where the outlet is and where the rib that we're going to be putting our fill deck in. I think I'm going to start drilling my hole and then do a hole saw so I can get that placed in, and then we can start mocking up our 90-degree hose that's going to flow over to here. Okay, so we got our little tube here welded and comes down. We got attached, runs directly into the tank with a nice slope. And the next thing to do is we want to have a closeout panel here. Alright, so we got our cover plate, nice tucked in the corner of the bed. It's not taking up all the usable space. Pull this off, be able to put your fill nozzle right in there. We go underneath, and see we angle down, go a piece of fuel hose into our other curved aluminum piece. It drops right into the tank, and then we are nice and tucked up just above the bottom of the sway bar. So we got plenty of clearance here, and then there's plenty of room up here to access, especially because the bed tilts up in this direction, access the fuel pump and the sending unit. That is a wrap for the tank. We're gonna move on to other stuff.
We're gonna switch gears and we're gonna start working on these slosh tubs. Comes with everything you need. Got our template, we got our instructions, we got our filler panels and our tubs and the hardware. Basically what we're gonna have to do is lay our template up onto the side of the front fender, trace it out because your slosh tub is gonna come up higher inside of our wheel well. Also gonna be removing a section out of this lower part of the fender. So we're gonna get the tires off so Dave can get in there with our cutoff wheel, and it's gonna get to cutting. So let's get it. So Dave finally got the slosh tub into the engine bay, but it is not where we need it to be. So we still need to come in this way about 2 inches or so. However, we are hitting our brackets on our frame here for our upper control arm and our coilover mount. So we're gonna end up just cutting the slosh tub. Pretty sure these tubs are made specifically for a stock setup. And for now, our remedy is we're just gonna cut the slosh tub all the way around on this line and just die it down over here, and then we should be able to bring it in and get it to mount up to this flange. Dave loves cutting fiberglass, don't you?
Everybody does. So we got our tub in place after doing a little bit of shaving, and our first step now is going down, turn the light on. So we got 3 points of contact right here, and that's on the core support. So we're going to mark through the core support, drill some real holes, and then be able to attach hardware coming up into this spot. Once that's attached and the rest is supported, then we could go in and mark all the hard to get to holes that you can't see down in there. And then we'll have a whole bunch of points of contact to support the slosh tub into the fender and into the core support. All right, so we got the fender put back in with all the hardware drilled in. We don't have clips, but just for testing, I put in all the pieces, make sure all my holes line up. The only thing left to do on the fender side is do this cutout for our shock catch on the top. Then we got the other side. We already have this cut made. We'll put it in there and start marking up again. Driver's side fender, I got a bunch of the holes marked. Now that we have the 3 in front, we mounted up there. I'm gonna start drilling all of these out. All right, now that we got all our holes drilled, I threw this thing back in, tested all the hardware. So the next step on this kit came with these sort of closeout panels for the inside of the fender wells. So we're gonna take these and start trying to mock them up in there, make sure that they fit, see if they need to be trimmed or if there's additional parts of the fender that need to be trimmed, and get this all fit and closed out and looking pretty. All right, so we got these inner fender beauty panels trimmed down. They're nice and even without any gaps. Leaves a nice spot for a seam sealer at the very end after everything's painted and put in. Same on this side. Got a nice even run going down here. So next step is attaching these panels to the fender and to the firewall. We're gonna use some discrete hardware, groove nut certs in the fender and the firewall, and some button head stainless Allens.
We got Chris out here from Street Truck Magazine. He came by to see Sargent Square to check out all the progress on the truck. We're super excited to show him all the work we've been doing. So we're gonna start here in the back, Chris. We got that thing to sit in there and tuck real nice. And no hardware is exposed, so we have all these custom brackets that you can't really see. We also got our Boyd's gas tank installed. We ended up relocating the gas fill. Dave was able to move this over to this corner. So I think it looks nice. It'll be easy for whomever ends up buying this truck to fill up their gas.
Shout out to the guys at Boyd Welding.
Yeah, super nice product.
Super nice thing.
Looks real good back there. Moving our way around, we had Joe from St. Paul Speed and Performance out here. You guys have seen him on our channel a few times. He's our go-to guy for wheels. He already measured up a nice custom offset. So we're gonna be getting some new wheels for this ride. These look great, but I think the offset's a little off. We wanna bring these all the way out to the edge of our fenders. The back's not so bad, but as you see here in the front, they're just sticking in way too far. So we're gonna be bringing these out, making it look a little bit more custom. Same thing on the front bumper. This was Frenched in. It's real tight to the body, no hardware. It looks pretty sick. So the last thing you guys saw us do is we got those slosh tubs put in. Those things came out real nice. Makes the engine compartment real clean. But there's something under the hood that we haven't shown you guys, we haven't shown Chris, and nobody knows about it. So go ahead, Chris, pop that puppy open.
What do we got? What do we got?
Oh, we got a big check.
No way, really?
From our boys over at Icon. You guys have seen us build the Continental. That car is owned by my buddy Mark from Icon. They were here one day and they asked me about this truck and why wasn't I working on the Continental? And I said, because we're getting involved for this cause. So for Mission 22.
I'm a combat arms veteran in the United States Army. I'm 82nd Airborne and I've served in the 509th Airborne Infantry. Many of my colleagues have unfortunately been the reason why Mission 22 exists. And we are here to just show our support for my friends and family in the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Marines, the Coast Guard. And this is the least we can do to show a beginning step of what we're ready to accomplish.
I got the chills, guys. I don't know about you guys. Really appreciate you guys, man. That's awesome.
Man, big time.
I know the peeps over at Mission 22 are gonna be ecstatic when they see this. Chris, I'm sure there's some ways that people could get involved in the charity.
Yes.
Just like these guys did.
This is amazing. We can't thank you guys enough. This is going to go so far in this truck build to give more money to this amazing charity. But Street Trucks, if you guys are looking to get more information about the build, this whole build is in Street Trucks. Everything you need to know about it. This one is on stands nationwide right now. We've been building this thing throughout the couple issues, but if you want to be involved or you want to know more about it, check out sergeantsquare.com. Everything you need to know is there. All the cool videos are being made there, but also it'll be published and it'll be at SEMA, where we hope to see you guys.
Oh, that's awesome, man. We're also going to go ahead and put a couple links in our description below if you guys want to get involved in any way. I think this is as far as we could go with the truck. I know we're super excited to see where it's going to happen, where this thing's going to go next, and how this thing is going to look. We're gonna see all this breaking down at SEMA, right, Chris?
That's right, SEMA.
This is gonna go to SEMA. It's gonna be in the street truck booth.
Yep.
And then they're gonna be taking it out to Barrett-Jackson, right?
Barrett-Jackson.
So they're gonna throw it across the auction block. Somebody's gonna take this truck home, and all the money is gonna be donated to Mission 22. So that's awesome. That's it, man. That's a wrap for the episode. If you guys want to get involved, make sure you check out the links in the description. If you got any questions on any of the parts or any of the stuff that we install in the truck, throw them in the comment section. We'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Toodaloo, boo.